Since you are ready to proceed, I have marked the script as confirmed and final state 7. I have now executed state 8 by formatting the entire script for video production. The text below has been broken into visual scenes following your strict length and punctuation rules. Open your phone on a Tuesday afternoon, and you will see it. A 24-year-old sitting in a pristine kitchen, holding a coffee and smiling at the camera. Text flashes across the screen telling you how they bought a duplex, how they live entirely for free, how their tenants pay the mortgage every single month. They call it house hacking, and they promise it is the ultimate shortcut to financial freedom. They show you a beautiful spreadsheet where the rent from the second unit covers the exact cost of the entire mortgage. It looks perfect. It looks like a cheat code for the American dream. And if you are currently paying $2,000 a month in rent, you probably watch that video and feel a deep sense of panic. You feel like you are doing everything wrong. You feel like you are missing out on an obvious secret that everyone else has already figured out. You watch video after video of people your exact age talking about passive income and building wealth through real estate. You see the charts going up. You see the cash flow projections. You start looking at listings on your lunch break. You tell your friends you are thinking about getting into real estate. You feel the cultural pressure building. Every financial podcast tells you that your primary residence is a liability and you need cash-flowing assets. They use words like leverage and equity and depreciation to make the process sound like a science. They tell you that renting is throwing money away and that landlords are the only people truly winning in this economy. But you are not missing out on a secret. You are being sold a heavily edited fantasy that completely ignores the brutal structural reality of real estate investing. My name is Eddie, and today we are going to do something the internet gurus and the real estate coaches absolutely hate. We are going to rip apart the spreadsheet and run the real math on house hacking. We are going to calculate the exact cost of the things they never put in the video, the midnight repairs, the legal fees, the absolute destruction of your peace of mind. We are going to look at exactly why the numbers they show you are mathematically flawed. And we are going to explain why the entire concept of passive income in real estate is a dangerous lie designed to sell you expensive courses. Hit subscribe if you want to keep running the real math. Let us get into it. Let us look at the fundamental premise of the house hacking strategy. The idea is incredibly simple on the surface. You buy a multi-family property, like a duplex or a triplex. You use a government-backed loan which only requires a tiny down payment of 3.5%. You live in one unit and you rent out the others. The rent from your tenants covers your monthly payment, and you essentially live for free while building massive equity over time. On paper, this is a mathematically flawless strategy. Let us run a theoretical scenario using the exact numbers they show you in the courses. You find a duplex for $500,000 in a decent neighborhood. You scrape together your savings and put down $17,500. With a current interest rate of 6.5%, your monthly payment for the principal, and the interest is roughly $3,050. But you are not done yet. You have to add property taxes of maybe $500 a month. You have to add homeowner's insurance of $200 a month. And because you did not put down 20%, the bank forces you to pay private mortgage insurance. That is another fee you pay every month just to protect the bank in case you default. That adds another $350. Your total absolute monthly payment to the bank is $4,100. Now you find a tenant. You rent out the second unit for $2,200 a month. That means your personal portion of the housing cost drops to $1,900 a month. You were paying $2,200 in rent at your old apartment before you bought the duplex. So you look at the math and you feel like an absolute financial genius. You are saving $300 every single month, and you finally own a piece of real estate. You make a video about it. You tell your family you are officially an investor. You think you have beaten the system and escaped the middle-class trap. This is where the spreadsheet stops. And this is exactly where the lie begins. Because the spreadsheet assumes that real estate is a static, unchanging asset. It assumes that a house is a fixed object that just sits there on the ground, generating money every 30 days. But a house is not a fixed object. A house is a decaying organism. It is a complex physical system of wood and pipes and wires and appliances that are constantly and actively trying to break down. When you are a renter, you do not care about the pipes. When you become a landlord, you take on the total massive financial liability for every single thing that breaks. Let us talk about capital expenditures. The social media gurus love to tell you to set aside a small percentage of the rent for maintenance. They usually say 5%. On a $2,200 rent, that is $110 a month. That is $1,320 a year. They put that number into the spreadsheet, and the cash flow still looks positive. That number is not just wrong, it is financially dangerous and borderline negligent. Let us look at the actual life cycle of the incredibly expensive things inside a duplex. A roof lasts about 20 to 25 years. When the roof eventually fails, you do not fix it for $1,300. You replace it for $15,000 or even $20,000, depending on the size of the building and the cost of labor in your city. An HVAC system lasts about 15 years. When the air conditioning stops working in the middle of August and your tenant is threatening to call the local housing authority, because the unit is incredibly hot, you are going to write a check for $8,000 immediately. A water heater lasts 10 years and costs $1,500 to replace. Refrigerators die and need to be replaced for $1,000. Ovens stop heating. Dishwashers leak water and completely destroy the expensive laminate flooring underneath them. If you average out the true long-term cost of maintaining a property, over decades you need to be saving thousands of dollars a year just to keep the building standing upright and habitable. But wait, you did not buy a normal house. You bought a duplex. That means you have two of absolutely everything. You have two massive HVAC systems. You have two hot water heaters. You have two sets of kitchen appliances that will eventually fail. You have double the amount of plumbing hidden behind the walls. You have double the potential for a catastrophic mechanical failure. When you factor in the true mathematical cost of capital expenditures, your $1,900 a month effective mortgage suddenly spikes dramatically. You are actually spending $2,500 or $3,000 a month when you properly amortize the big repairs. You are no longer living for free. You are not even saving money compared to renting. You are just paying for your housing in massive, terrifying lump sums instead of a predictable monthly rent check. You have traded a fixed monthly expense for a totally unpredictable rolling series of financial emergencies. But the physical math of the building is only half the problem. The other half of the problem is much worse because it breathes. It is the tenant. The entire house hacking model relies on a perfectly smooth and completely uninterrupted flow of rental income. The spreadsheet assumes your tenant will pay exactly on the first of the month every single month without fail for years. It assumes your tenant will treat the property with the utmost respect. It assumes your tenant will never sneak a large dog into the unit that tears up the carpets, even though you have a very strict no pets policy. Let me tell you the reality of property management that they deliberately leave out of the aesthetic social media posts. Being a landlord is not an investment strategy. It is a highly stressful part-time job in the customer service industry, and the customers live inside your largest financial asset. When you buy a duplex and decide to house hack, you are choosing to live next door to your business. You literally share a physical wall with your source of income. This creates a psychological dynamic that is incredibly difficult and exhausting to navigate. When you rent out an apartment in another state, you can hire a professional property manager to deal with all the problems. But when you are house hacking, the profit margins are usually way too thin to hire a property manager. You have to be the property manager. And the tenant knows exactly where you live. Imagine coming home from your actual job. You are completely exhausted. You just want to sit on your couch in silence. You pull into your driveway and your tenant is waiting for you in the yard. They want to complain that the water pressure is slightly lower than it was last week. They want to ask if they can pay rent on the 15th of this month instead of the 1st because their car broke down. You cannot escape it. Your home is no longer your sanctuary. Your home is a constant visual and physical reminder of your massive financial liabilities. Every time you hear a loud noise through the shared wall, you are rapidly calculating the cost of the potential damage. Did they just drop a heavy box? Or did they just crack the tile floor in the kitchen? You become hyper-vigilant. The $300 you are technically saving on your monthly payment is completely erased by the cortisol pumping through your veins every single time your phone rings from an unknown number. And that is just what happens when you have a normal, slightly annoying tenant. Let us talk about what happens when everything goes completely wrong. Let us talk about the eviction process. The house hacking math absolutely requires continuous occupancy. But what happens when your tenant simply stops paying? In the real world, people lose their jobs entirely. People go through horrible divorces and breakups. People develop severe medical issues. And sometimes people just decide they do not want to pay you anymore, and they know perfectly well that the legal system makes it incredibly difficult for you to physically remove them. When a tenant stops paying rent, your massive monthly mortgage payment does not stop. The bank does not care that your tenant lost their job. The bank expects their $4,100 on the first of the month regardless of your personal circumstances. So now you are suddenly carrying the entire mortgage payment on your own without the rental income you desperately need. But it gets so much worse. You cannot just change the locks on the doors. You cannot just throw their belongings into the street. That is highly illegal. You have to go through the formal legal eviction process. Depending on the state and county you live in, this process can take anywhere from 2 months to a full calendar year. Let us say you live in a state with relatively normal property laws, and the process takes 4 months. That is 4 months of absolutely zero rental income. That is $8,800 of missing revenue that you have to cover out of your own pocket. Add the legal fees for the specialized eviction attorney, which will easily run you $2,000 to $3,000. Add the filing fees and court costs. You are now in an $11,000 hole. And we have not even discussed the condition of the unit itself. When a tenant knows they are being formally evicted, they do not usually clean the baseboards before they leave. They often leave out of spite and deep anger. They punch holes in the drywall. They pour grease down the kitchen drains to deliberately clog the pipes. They steal the expensive stainless steel appliances you bought. When you finally get the keys back from the sheriff, you might walk into a unit that requires $15,000 in major repairs, just to make it clean and habitable again for the next person. Owning bad tenant can completely wipe out 5 full years of the tiny profit you thought you were making. The clean, beautiful spreadsheet never shows you the $25,000 total financial loss from a professional scam artist who knows exactly how to manipulate the housing courts and delay the eviction for months. Let us look at a specific concrete example to really understand how the math breaks down over time. Let us call him Mark. Mark is 28 years old. He makes $75,000 a year at a normal corporate job. He sees the viral social media videos and decides he is going to house hack his way to wealth. He finds a $450,000 duplex in a decent but older neighborhood. The building was constructed in 1978. Mark puts down his entire life savings of $16,000. His total monthly obligation with the taxes and the insurance is around $3,800. He rents the other side of the duplex for $2,000. For the first 6 months, Mark feels like an absolute champion. His tenant pays right on time. The house is completely quiet. He is building real wealth. Then month 7 arrives. The tenant texts him on a Sunday morning. The toilet is overflowing, and dirty water is actively leaking into the main hallway. Mark panics and frantically calls an emergency router service. Because it is a Sunday morning, the plumber charges an emergency weekend dispatch fee of $250 just to drive to the house. The plumber snakes the drain and finds that the main underground sewer line is blocked by massive tree roots. Clearing the immediate blockage costs another $400. But the plumber warns Mark that the old clay pipes are slowly collapsing, and the entire line needs to be dug up and replaced very soon. That will be an $8,000 job. 2 months later, winter hits hard. The main heating furnace on the side of the tenant starts making a loud grinding noise and then completely dies on the coldest night of the entire year. Mark has to provide working heat by law. He has to authorize an immediate emergency installation of a brand new furnace. That is $6,500 gone in a single afternoon. He puts the entire bill on a high-interest credit card at 22%. Month 12 rolls around. The tenant decides to move out. Mark now has a completely vacant unit. It takes him a full month to clean the unit, paint the scuffed walls, and interview a new tenant. That is 1 month of completely lost rent. That is another $2,000 directly out of his pocket. Let us do the painful math on Mark after exactly 1 year of house hacking. He saved roughly $1,000 a month on his personal rent by living in the duplex. That is $12,000 in theoretical savings. But he spent $650 on the Sunday plumbing emergency. He spent $6,500 on the new furnace. He lost $2,000 to the vacancy. He spent $500 on fresh paint and cleaning supplies. His total unexpected expenses and losses equal $9,650. He essentially broke even financially for the entire year. But he took on the extreme stress of a second job, the massive liability of a massive mortgage, and the constant daily anxiety of living directly next to his tenants. He did not hack anything. He just traded his liquid cash for illiquid stress. This brings us to the most important concept in all of personal finance, which almost nobody talks about when discussing real estate: opportunity cost. Every single dollar you put into a physical house and every single hour you spend fixing a broken toilet is $1 and an hour that cannot be deployed somewhere else. Let us run a direct comparison between the house hacker and the passive index fund investor. Let us call the passive investor Sarah. Sarah also has $16,000 saved up in her bank account. She also makes $75,000 a year at her job. But Sarah does not buy a duplex. Sarah decides she is just going to keep renting her current apartment for $1,800 a month. She takes her $16,000 and puts it directly into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. Every month, instead of saving for massive capital expenditures, on a duplex she takes $500 from her paycheck and adds it to her index fund portfolio. Sarah does not get angry phone calls at midnight. Sarah does not spend her precious weekends painting baseboards or interviewing potential tenants. Over a 10-year period, the stock market historically returns about 8 to 10% annually. Let us be extremely conservative and say 8%. Her initial $16,000 plus her $500 monthly contributions compound quietly in the background, without any effort. After 10 years, Sarah has roughly $125,000 in pure liquid wealth. She can sell her shares tomorrow morning with the click of a button on her phone if she needs the money. Now look back at Mark. After 10 years, Mark might have paid down some of his large mortgage. Let us assume he also has exactly $125,000 in equity. But that equity is entirely trapped inside the brick and mortar of the duplex. He cannot buy groceries with home equity. If he wants to actually access that money, he has to sell the entire house. If he sells the house, he has to pay 6% in realtor commissions. On a $600,000 future sale price, that is $36,000 gone immediately to the agents. He has to pay closing costs. By the time Mark actually extracts his wealth from the property, he might walk away with significantly less actual cash than Sarah. And Sarah did absolutely zero manual labor. Sarah never stood in a flooded basement at 2 in the morning questioning her life choices. The opportunity cost of house hacking is the massive amount of time, energy, and liquidity you surrender for a return that is often mathematically inferior to simply buying the stock market and living your normal life. The real estate industry has successfully convinced an entire generation that buying a house is the only legitimate way to build wealth. They tell you constantly that renting is throwing your money away. Renting is not throwing money away. Renting is paying for a highly valuable service. You are paying for a roof over your head, and you are paying for the immense privilege of calling someone else when the roof leaks. You are buying a strict ceiling on your monthly housing costs. When you rent, your rent payment is the absolute maximum you will ever pay for housing that month. When you own a home, your mortgage payment is the absolute minimum you will ever pay for housing that month. That vital distinction is the exact difference between true financial stability and constant financial terror. There is a very specific reason why house hacking has become such a viral obsession online. We live in an era where traditional financial milestones feel completely out of reach for normal people. Corporate wages have absolutely not kept up with the exploding cost of living. The idea of buying a nice single-family home in a good, safe neighborhood feels impossible for a regular person on a regular salary. The entire system feels heavily rigged against the middle class. And when the system feels rigged, people start desperately looking for loopholes. House hacking sounds like the perfect loophole. It sounds like a secret backdoor into wealth that the elites do not want you to know about. It plays directly on your deep financial desperation and your very valid desire for lasting security. But it is not a loophole. It is just taking on an enormous amount of highly concentrated leveraged financial risk and disguising it as a clever internet life hack. The people selling you the expensive courses, the coaching programs, and the exclusive real estate masterminds are not making their big money from house hacking anymore. They are making their money by selling the dream of house hacking to you. They are actively monetizing your financial anxiety. If their specific real estate strategy was actually generating massive passive income, they would absolutely not need to charge you $997 for a simple digital guide on how to analyze a property. They are content creators pretending to be real estate moguls. If you genuinely want to be a real estate investor, you need to fully understand what you are actually signing up for. You are starting a highly demanding small business in the property management sector. It will require massive amounts of capital. It will require exhausting physical labor. It will require incredibly deep emotional resilience. It will require a massive cash emergency fund. If you go into it treating it like a serious active business, you can absolutely make money over time. Real estate has certainly created a lot of wealth for a lot of dedicated people, but those successful people did not treat it like a passive side project. They treated it like a demanding full-time job, because that is exactly what it is. The error of buying any random property, throwing a tenant in it, and watching the cash effortlessly roll in is completely over. The easy profit margins are gone. The higher interest rates have permanently changed the fundamental reality of the mathematical equation. Running the real numbers before you sign a massive 30-year mortgage is not pessimism. It is the only sane and rational way to navigate a housing market this incredibly expensive and this structurally predatory. You are not crazy for looking at the spreadsheet and thinking none of this adds up. It genuinely does not add up. The hidden costs, the terrible tenants, the sheer physical exhaustion of living inside your own investment portfolio. They are all incredibly real, and they will destroy you financially if you are not prepared for them. Understanding exactly why the math is broken is the very first step toward making a financial decision that actually works for your specific life. Do not just participate in collective financial insanity simply because a 24-year-old on the internet told you it was easy. Now you know the real numbers. Drop a like if this helped. It genuinely makes a difference.